Welcome back to the final two chapters of My Father's Dragon. Let's review what's happened so far. My father, or Elmer, is on Wild Island. He's on Wild Island to find a dragon that his friend, a cat, tells him is tied up by the neck with a big rope. And it's tied up and held as a prisoner by these wild animals that live on Wild Island. And my father, well, he's on his way to rescue the dragon so that he can take a ride on the dragon because my father has always wanted to fly. When he left for the island, he packed a knapsack or backpack full of the most interesting supplies. Let's review what those supplies are. He brought chewing gum, 24 pink lollipops, a package of rubber bands, black rubber boots, a compass, a toothbrush and a tube of toothpaste, 6 magnifying glasses, a very sharp jackknife, a comb and a hairbrush, 7 hair ribbons of different colors, an empty grain bag with a label saying cranberry, some clean clothes, enough food to last while he was on the ship. He brought 25 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, 6 apples, and then he found some tangerines on the island of Tangeria. But those items have come in so handy. Remember how he tricked the lion by telling the lion that he could make his mane beautiful with the hairbrush and the rubber bands? And then he tricked the rhinoceros, who was so sad about his dingy or dirty tusk that he wanted to make it clean. So my father had toothbrush and toothpaste. So these items have come in handy. In fact, when we left off, he had just tricked a gorilla. The gorilla had fleas, and he had monkeys coming to pick the fleas off the gorilla. Well, the monkeys couldn't find the fleas because they were so little. But my father, clever Elmer, he had magnifying glasses in his knapsack. So he gave the monkeys the magnifying glasses and they used them to find the fleas on the gorilla. And that's how my father escaped the gorilla. Well, now he's at the river and he's trying to find the dragon. Remember, there are crocodiles that live in that river. His friend the cat told him about the crocodiles. So let's finish off. Chapter 9, My Father Makes a Bridge. My father walked back and forth along the bank trying to find some way to cross the river. He found a high flagpole with a rope going over to the other side. The rope went through a loop at the top of the pole and then down the pole and around the large crank. A sign on the crank said, "To summon dragon, yank the crank. Report disorderly conduct to gorilla." From what the cat had told my father, he knew the other end of the rope was tied around the dragon's neck, and he felt sorrier than ever for the poor dragon. If he were on this side, the gorilla would twist his wings until it hurt so much that he'd have to fly to the other side. If he were on the other side, the gorilla would crank the rope until the dragon would either choke to death or fly back to this side. What a life for that baby dragon. My father knew that if he called the dragon to come across the river, the gorilla would surely hear him. So he thought about climbing the pole and going across on the rope. The pole was very high, and even if he could get to the top without being seen, he'd have to go all the way across hand over hand. The river was very muddy, and all sorts of unfriendly things might live in it, but my father could think of no other way to get across. He was about to start up the pole when, despite all the noise the monkeys were making, he heard a loud splash behind him. He looked all around in the water, but it was dusk now, and he couldn't see anything there. It's me, Crocodile," said the voice to the left. "The water's lovely, but I have such a craving for something sweet. Won't you come in for a swim?" A pale moon came out from behind the clouds, and my father could see where the voice was coming from. The crocodile's head was just peeping out of the water. "Oh, no, thank you," said my father. "I never swim after sundown, but I do have something sweet to offer you. Perhaps you'd like a lollipop, and perhaps you have friends who would like lollipops too." "Lollipops?" said the crocodile. "Why, that is a treat. How about it, boys?" A whole chorus of voices shouted, "Hurrah, lollipops!" and my father counted as many as 17 crocodiles with their heads just peeping out of the water. "That's fine," said my father as he got out 24 pink lollipops and the rubber bands. "I'll stick one here for you in the bank. Lollipops last longer if you keep them out of the water. Now, one of you can have this one." The crocodile who had first spoken swam up and tasted it. "Ah, delicious, mighty delicious," he said. "Now, if you don't mind," said my father, "I'll just walk along your back and fasten another lollipop to the tip of your tail with a rubber band. You don't mind, do you?" "Oh, no, not in the least," said the crocodile. "Can you get your tail out of the water just a bit?" asked my father. "Yes, of course," said the crocodile, and he lifted up his tail. Then my father ran along his back and fastened another lollipop with a rubber band. "Who's next?" said my father, and a second crocodile swam up and began sucking on that lollipop. "Now, you gentlemen can save a lot of time if you just line up across the river," said my father, "and I'll just be along to give you each a lollipop." So the crocodiles lined up across the river with their tails in the air, waiting for my father to fasten on the rest of the lollipops. The tail of the 17th crocodile just reached the other bank. So he's used the crocodiles to make a bridge to cross the river. And remember, the dragon is on the other side of the river. He tied lollipops to the end of each crocodile's tail, and he's using them as a crocodile bridge. Chapter 10. My father finds the dragon. When my father was crossing the back of the 15th crocodile with 2 more lollipops to go, the noise of the monkeys suddenly stopped, and he could hear a much bigger noise getting louder every second. Then he could hear 7 furious tigers and 1 raging rhinoceros, and 2 seething lions, and 1 ranting gorilla, along with countless screeching monkeys, led by 2 extremely irate wild boars, all yelling, "It's a trick! It's a trick! There's an invasion, and it must be after our dragon! Kill it! Kill it!" The whole crowd stampeded down the bank. As my father was fixing the 17th lollipop for the last crocodile, he heard a wild boar scream, "Look! It came that way, and it's over there now, see? The crocodile's made a bridge for it." And just as my father leapt onto the other bank, one of the wild boars jumped on the back of one of the first crocodiles. My father didn't have a moment to spare. By now, the dragon realized that my father was coming to rescue him. He ran out of the bushes and jumped up and down, yelling, Here I am, right here, can you see me? Hurry, the boar is coming over the crocodiles too. They're all coming over. Oh, please, hurry, hurry." The noise was simply terrific. My father ran up the dragon and took out his very sharp jackknife. "Steady, old boy, steady. We'll make it just stand still," he told the dragon, and he began to saw through the big rope. By this time, both boars, all 7 tigers, the 2 lions, the rhinoceros, and the gorilla, along with the countless screeching monkeys, were all on their way across the river on the crocodiles, and there was still a lot of rope to cut through. "Oh, hurry," the dragon kept saying, and my father again told him to stand still. "If I don't think I can make it," I said to my father, "we'll fly over to the other side of the river and I can finish cutting the rope there." Suddenly the screaming grew louder and madder, and my father thought the animals must have crossed the river. He looked around and saw something which surprised and delighted him, partly because he had just finished his lollipop, and partly because, as I told you before, crocodiles are very moody and not the least bit dependable and are always looking for something to eat. The first crocodile had turned away from the bank and started swimming down the river. The second crocodile hadn't finished yet, so he followed right after the first, still sucking on his lollipop. All the rest did the same thing, one right after another, until they were all swimming away in a line. The 2 wild boars, the 7 tigers, the rhinoceros, the 2 lions, the gorilla, along with the countless screeching monkeys, were all riding down the middle of the river on the train of crocodiles. And they were all sucking pink lollipops and all yelling and screaming and getting their feet wet. My father and the dragon laughed themselves weak because it was such a silly sight. As soon as they had recovered, my father finished cutting the rope, and the dragon raced around in circles and tried to turn a somersault. He was the most excited baby dragon that ever lived. My father was in a hurry to fly away, and when the dragon finally calmed down a bit, my father climbed up onto his back. "All aboard," said the dragon. "Where shall we go?" "We'll spend the night on the beach, and then tomorrow we'll start on our long journey home. So it's off to the shores of Tangier," shouted my father, as the dragon soared above the dark jungle and the muddy river, and all the animals bellowing at them, and all the crocodiles licking pink lollipops and grinning wide grins. After all, what did the crocodiles care about a wade across the river, and what a fine feast they were carrying on their backs. As my father and the dragon passed over the ocean rocks, they heard a tiny, excited voice scream, "Bum cack, we dread our ragon. We need our dragon." But my father and the dragon knew that nothing in the world would ever make them go back to Wild Island. The end. So that was fun. What a great book. What was your favorite part? I really liked when the lion wanted its hair done and my father had the rubber bands and the brush and they made it beautiful with braids. I really liked that part. And I liked the silly mouse who talked funny. He said that last sentence. That was the mouse that said the last sentence there that said, it said, bum cack, we dread our naggin. We need our dragon." He mixed up the D and the N. He's a silly mouse. So what do you think? Would you go to Wild Island? Would you pack things in your knapsack if you were to go on an adventure like my father went on an adventure? What kind of things would you put in your backpack? If you had to pick five things to take with you to a wild island, what would you take? Write that down. I want to hear it. Show me a picture of your knapsack or your backpack and draw me pictures and label in the picture the 5 things you would bring on an adventure to a wild island. That was a really great book. Thanks for following along. Bye.